Hey, Ron Newcomb here with the Indie Coach podcast. I am here with my new friend Tyler. We are going to be talking about creativity, artistic vision, and just filmmaking from his lens, his experience to hopefully guide and help us through um, our lives of what we're trying to do in the independent creative space. So I don't want to do too much of an intro, Tyler, because I want to give you the floor to be able to do that. But with over 2 decades of the film industry in your back pocket, can you share maybe some pivotal moments that kind of shaped your career, as well as kind of letting us know a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course. I'll just do the quick. I'll just dive through real fast. I mean, my whole life, it's always been about film, even from when I was in high school and shooting on old tapes. To grad school to undergrad, everything was always media and film. So I always knew that would be the trajectory. And like most people, I started out being wanting to be a director and writer, and I kind of fell into producing when I was in grad school. And then I started falling in love with that. And at that time, I loved music videos. So I mean, grad school was fine and all, but I wanted to do something more outside of that. So I started looking, and I was in Georgia, so there's a lot of music scenes there. So I was looking at music video in Georgia, and I did that for a while. And I could have kind of continued as like a good starting point in a career there, but my I met my wife at grad school also, and she was a visual effects supervisor, and she had a opportunity to move to India. So we did that, and that changed course. And I didn't really have anything to do, so I was doing some teaching there. And then I had a friend who worked for an unscripted reality TV company, and they were putting together a lot of shows. And he was just like, "Hey, Tyler, if you have any ideas, let me know." And so I started packaging ideas, and I really got into that casting. And so I worked in unscripted for a while. And then after that, I kind of did that for a little bit. And then I had another friend who needed help with producing a documentary. And it was a documentary commissioned by a brand in essence. So it's almost just like a giant commercial, but it's like a $300,000 commercial in essence, but it's a documentary. So I did that. And then I sort of kind of got back into producing. And then with that, that led to some advertising. I was working advertising work for a while. Then moved, we were in New York at that point, then moved to Sweden, where my wife is from, and that's when I dived back into actual films and indie films. And I worked as a production manager for quite some time on the indie films in that $2 to $6 million range. And then I worked for a film financing company for a while, and then now I'm back on my own again, and have a producing partner here in Sweden. And we focus on the financial development side of films and TV. So
So,
that's like a 20-second summary of 20
yeah,
years in a way.
no, that's awesome. Sounds like you've had a great career already, and it still seems like you have a lot of runway ahead of you. So, you've done something that I think a lot of filmmakers really have not done. And although I think we have become smaller from a global sense, a lot of us still kind of stay within our lane of whatever country we were born in, and then that's kind of it. But the world has gotten a lot smaller. So, since you've worked across several different countries, how have these diverse experiences kind of influenced your filmmaking approach? What have they kind of taught you, I guess?
Well, I think the biggest thing is kind of what you just said there is that really this is it's going to sound weird, but the earth is flat in a way, like it's linear, and that like everything is connected in this very linear way, in that way. uh
Yeah.
not in scientific terms. But so I mean, so my point is, like, it's so easy to connect with people in other countries where, I mean, the the especially independent film, any kind of filmmaking is pretty universal in the way it's done. I mean, the financing is a little bit different in different places in the way that, what's available, but the way in which movies are made is universal. No one is making movies differently in one country than they're being done in another country, which means you can find collaborators all over the world, which is a very, very powerful thing, because a lot of times filmmakers are unable to maybe find collaborators where they are, especially
Yeah.
indie filmmakers. And so if you can find collaborators in other parts of the world, it really helps you. You can each bring something unique to that, and maybe help elevate and move your film faster into production or financing, because you have these two different variables from different areas. So I think that's the biggest take. Like what I learned when I was traveling around the world and working around the world is that it's all connected and that everything is kind of done the same and everyone has the same ambitions. So it's in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, especially with indie films, everyone has an idea and they need creative collaborators and then they need financial collaborators and they need to raise money and they need to release. And all of those needs are the same no matter where you are.
Right.
But what's different is the way in which they can be done. Like you can find different distribution models, in one country that maybe you don't have different financing models. And so connecting internationally is a really great way to help your films get off the ground.
Yeah, it's funny. I've kind of I could testify I think to that truth. Right now, I'm collaborating with two French filmmakers, and just never thought in my wildest dreams, it'd be across the pond and we'd all be collaborating. But I met them here at an event in the States, and then we had a lot of synergy, and so we're working on kind of trying to solve some problems within the film paradigm. But it definitely seems like the world has gotten a lot smaller. I mean, I have great friends that are down in Australia doing stuff in New Zealand, and then there's a great visual effects house. I mean, fantastic. And they're in Thailand. I mean, it's just crazy how small the world has gotten. You really kind of advocate something that I do as well, and it's for filmmakers to start with distribution in mind. Can you maybe elaborate on why this approach is crucial and how it impacts the filmmaking process?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really glad you asked this question. I mean, you don't have to know 100% how you plan to distribute your film. I mean, you should have an idea. I mean, because obviously you may want to wait, make your film, and then sell it. But you need to understand that process and how that's going to work and who's going to, who's going to be your sales agent, things like that. We're not going to dive into all those details. But the idea is you need to know it's a product. In essence, it's one singular product. How are you going to sell that product? And you need to answer that question, especially before you go and are asking for money. If you're trying to raise money and you want investors, the question is, well, how are you going to make money?
Yeah.
And to answer that question, you need to know how to distribute your film and how you plan on distributing your film. That's why, actually, it's so funny. I was just writing an article about it today that I'll release in a couple of weeks in my newsletter. But it's like filmmakers are usually asking this in this order: How do I get money? How do I make my film? How do I release my film or sell my film? And the first question should be, how do I sell my film? How do I make my film? How do I find the money to make my film? Because
Right.
if you can answer those two questions, how do I sell my film and how am I going to make my film? And that means like the proper budget and things like that. Then you can answer the question of how am I going to find money to make my film? Because that is as weird as that is. I mean, actually finding the money isn't that hard, but it gets harder if you're not thinking about how you're going to make money off of your film first.
Yeah.
Because you need to have that answer. You need to know how you're going to do that and understand those strategies before and if and the thing is I also advocate, like we're talking about collaboration, like if you are not the one who wants to do those things and you are not inclined to sort of figure it out and learn it, that's fine, but bring on a collaborator, bring on another producer. Like, okay, I'm bringing on this producer who's going to help me with just distribution and understand distribution. So even if you're not doing it, just make sure you have the right people with you that can do those things.
Yep. No, totally agree. Definitely appreciate that perspective. Um, in fact, I get your newsletter and I really appreciate a lot of the articles you've written. And one of them was comparing filmmaking to cooking, if I'm recalling right. And so emphasizing the importance of serving up a wide audience. And to me, that's kind of the differentiating factor, that there are, when you do a film, it's not for you and I to read or to be pleased with it. It really is intended to have an audience and kind of the widest audience that you can birth. So how can indie filmmakers ensure that their feast that they're serving up reaches just beyond family and friends? Because unfortunately, a lot of times as independents, that's about as far as the reach goes.
Well, I mean, that's the hard thing. I mean, that's where money comes into play, marketing especially. So that's the tricky thing. So if we're talking, let's go back to that distribution. I mean, part of that is also understanding marketing. And if you're like, look, I'm not gonna, I mean, you may have no marketing budget, but I mean, you should try if you're going out to raise money. And let's say you have a $500,000 film. Can you can you just tack on $10,000 more? And to go through investors and crowdfunding and all that, but just say like, this is going to be my $10,000 of marketing, because you need to then target those people. I mean, even if you're only using Instagram and X, and Facebook ads, I mean, they have incredible targeting tools.
Yeah.
So I know my film it's got this theme, and it takes place, maybe it takes place, in some kind of small town. So I'm going to focus on small towns with this theme. Oh, maybe it's like this, it's a sports kind of film. So you can really target your market there to that, and that's the audience you want to find. I mean, they sort of do this, uh it's like spray and pray, which comes like, you just fire away and hope you hit something. And I think a lot of filmmakers just do that. They get their film out there and they kind
Yeah.
of just throw things on Instagram and LinkedIn and be like, hey, follow, like, here's my film, and just kind of hope somebody sees it.
Yep.
But really, you got to focus on, so when you think about your distribution, think about, okay, who is my audience? Who would want to see this film? It could be about genre, and it could be about age, it could be about topic and themes and all those things. And then say, okay, I've only got $5,000 or $10,000. Let's see if I can come up with some smart, clever marketing stuff that I can just use social media and do it that way. And then, if you do that right, that $10,000 could be $500,000 worth
Yeah.
of views and payment, for that film.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm currently reading another marketing book right now. In fact, not within the film industry, just a marketing book. And sure enough, they're talking about the hero's journey. What problem are you solving? We're the guide. We're not the hero. They are. The audience is the hero. So how can you engage them in that endeavor? So we as storytellers need to take that along with us when we're doing marketing. You can't just create the thing, throw it over the wall, and expect it to find an audience. You have to have the decision beforehand to understand who your audience is. What problem are you solving with them? What escapism are you giving them? What hope, inspiration, theme, whatever it might be that
Yeah.
you're tackling, who is that for? Who needs to see this film? And with those answers, then you can, as you said, there's very positive, powerful algorithms now that you can deploy. And it's kind of a neutral playing ground because, again, $10,000 in a very specific ad campaign is extremely beneficial, much like it used to be where you would put, posters up everywhere and just hope for the best. Now you can be very specific on who you're going after with that. With independent filmmakers, now, so let me start by saying that I used to be a police officer, and we used to watch these videos where unfortunately police officers were either killed in line of duty or wounded. And it was hard to see because it kind of felt like you were money morning quarterbacking these people, and they had given their lives in the service of our country and their jurisdiction. But the reality is you're trying to watch it from a learning perspective. You don't want the same thing to happen to another officer. And so we would try to break down where could have things gone differently or what could we have done. And I take it from that similar vein of approach. Maybe that not that dramatic, but certainly that same approach from the independent filmmakers, because a lot of them, I think, blame the studios, and maybe rightly so for a lot of things, but they don't own a lot of their problems either. So what common mistakes do independent filmmakers make when it comes to distribution, and how really can they try to avoid them, or even filmmaking at large, but just thinking through the distribution path still?
Well, I was just actually thinking about this earlier today. So, you know, making a film, you are making something that has been made 100,000 times before, which means there's 100,000 examples. There's 100,000, times 10 of that data points. You have so much reference material, and yet for some reason, indie filmmakers don't. They act like when they're making this film, it's like the first time. Like, yes, your film, your idea is new, but the concept is old and tried and true, and it's been done over and over again. And I think they just don't. You need to spend so much time on data and research. And some stuff is available and some stuff isn't. But there's plenty of what is it, something like hundreds of beavers or thousands of beavers, and they did like they four-walled it, and they rented out movie theaters, and they got lots of people to come see their movies. Well, there's a great example. So dive into that. There's people who just went to, just use Tubi and are making a lot of money just using Tubi. Okay, well, look at what they are doing and how they're doing it. I guarantee you, too, most of those filmmakers, just like asking somebody to be a guest on your podcast, all you have to do is reach out to them and just
Yeah.
say, hey, by the way, I saw this film on Tubi and it looks like you've gotten like 20,000 views or 100,000 views. Like, I would love to know how you're doing this. Most of those people will get back to be like, oh, I'd love to talk to you. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
That's how I learned from even like producers and investors way up here, way above my level. I just reach out and just say, hey, this is who I am. At some point I want to pitch to you, but I'm not pitching now. But I
Right.
want to make sure when I do pitch to you, I have the right information together. And they'll sit with me and they'll literally just lay out, okay, Tyler, we would love you to pitch to us. If you have a project and it has this, and this,
Yeah.
send it to us like that. And then, yeah, we will definitely look at it. And if you got all those things, we would say yes. And then they literally lay out the game plan of how to do it. And so distribution is there's no new magical model. There's all kinds of models and everyone has done all kinds of things. So if you think, okay, I'm just going to use YouTube and Tubi, okay, well, look at films that are like yours and see what they're doing, see if you can find any social media they've done, or just easily reach out to the producer and director because they're probably just 2 years ahead of you or 3 years ahead of you. They're not this 50-year-old, producer who's been producing for 20, 30 years is just doing this $500,000. I mean, so my point is like they are right at that same kind of level with you, and they most likely will just open up some information. And on top of that, you may get a collaborator from it, which just helps.
Absolutely.
Or they may even say, hey, you know what? We're actually looking for a project like yours. We'd love to come on and just help you with it.
Yeah.
So do that research. There's so much information out there. And I don't think enough filmmakers do research
Hmm.
on films like theirs and how they plan to make money and how they plan to distribute. It's like I mean, you're not inventing this for the first time. So don't pretend you are.
Yeah.
So treat it, I mean, you're doing something. It's just like if you're going to open a restaurant, you would look at all the other restaurants around, and
Of
see
course.
how they're doing and how they're succeeding. So, the information's out there. So do that research and talk to people, ask questions.
Yep. That's
And
great
just
advice.
back to that again, just the
Yeah.
question thing. Like people reach out to me and they ask me questions. Like, okay, that's fine, I'll help you, but I'm not in your exact situation. Find someone and find a film that is like yours and talk to those people. Reach out to those producers
Yeah.
and ask them because that is where you'll get the best information.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's great advice. Um, so I want to keep this one a little more open than maybe what it sounds, but because of your extensive experience, how do you see the role of traditional distribution channels evolving and changing? And I know that's doing it right in front of our very eyes, all the time. It seems like daily there's like some new headline that comes out that I'm like, holy cow, this could be a game changer. But just trying to give some insight with someone with their kind of ear close to the ground, someone who's in it, trying to discern what is around the corner for distribution, and then maybe even broader than that. Not just it's hard not to think about AI. That's the obvious overt one. And certainly we can talk about thoughts on that, but also just trends that you might see within the film industry that might be coming down the line. So just kind of wanted to open up your thoughts on where do you kind of see film going in the next 3 to 5 years besides crazy?
Um, yeah. Well, we'll move AI from that for a second because that's like a whole different
Yeah.
thing for now. But in terms of distribution, I mean, that's not 100%. I mean, I am very passionate about it. I was just had some amazing conversations with some VPs yesterday of distributors, and so it's something that obviously I put a lot of focus and energy on. But in terms of sort of foresight, I don't. I mean, I can't say I have anything. Any clear vision of what that would be, especially the next 5 years. I imagine it's, you know, there's constantly popping up small little streamers, and my guess is that bigger companies will start aggregating, and packaging smaller little streamers. Like and we know that vertical streaming is very interesting right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But I think that there's always still a place for theater and theatrical, and and once you start getting to a certain budget level, even above like 3, 4, 5 million, even when you're in that, I mean, theatrical should be 100%, unless you plan on hopefully selling it to like a streamer. But
Yeah.
theatrical should be part of your strategy, even if it's like, oh, I'm only going to be on 100 screens in a pocket of territories.
Yep.
So theatrical is still going to be there. So I think many of the things will be the same, but I mean, there's going to be, I think, more services like Tubi and things like that will pop up. And most likely they'll be bought out by companies like Tubi. Something small will pop up. It'll
Yeah.
be its own for a few five years or something. Realize, oh, there's a pretty good, and then somebody else is just going to,
Yeah.
consume it, which
Yeah.
is, usually the way that works. So
Yeah.
I think, and especially in the next 5 years, I can't imagine it's going to be too much different than even what we're going through now. I mean, and if we're talking about AI, at most, I think that'll just be models that will help determine where a film should go and how much it'll make and things like that, and you know putting it in front of the right eyeballs.
Yeah, I think that's a great use for it. Film is one of the few things where you build the thing, make the thing, spend all the money, go raise the capital for the thing, and then throw it over the fence and hope it finds an audience. And in the entrepreneurial world, that's backwards. They don't
Yeah,
do that.
exactly.
They don't do it that
No.
way. So AI, I can see, in fact, one of the problems I'm trying to solve is just that very thing. And it's trying to figure out like what can we present to the audience so that they can at least engage and kind of give us feedback. Like what's the earliest point we could get feedback from? Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a powerful tool to know. I mean, to really know who your audience is
yes.
before even getting it out to
Right.
your audience.
Right. Not in theory, exactly, but
Yeah,
who's clicking,
exactly.
who's responding to you. Right. Yeah, agreed. So one of the things that I really appreciate about your what you do and what you offer in your newsletter, and why I knew there was like, I felt like there was some synergy potentially here, is that you offer a film business plan template still, I believe, through your newsletter. Is that accurate? You're,
Yeah.
okay, great. So I get pinged a lot about business plans, from filmmakers. They like the creative, but the business plan side of things is a little bit elusive to them. They don't know if they should go traditional entrepreneurial business plan kind of way, or is it more creative? Is it more of a pitch deck, a lookbook, this kind of stuff? So, what key elements should filmmakers focus on when putting together a business plan for their projects?
Well, think of it. I mean, it's a business, right? So, what's the plan of the business, and what are the main things you need? You need to, how much money do you need to make the product? So, and to know that you need a budget. So, in essence, it's like laying, and that's okay. What is the staff cost, and what are the products? The small materials cost to make this product. And that's the film, and that's your crew, and that's your equipment, and all those things. So you need a real budget, no matter what. I mean, you shouldn't be
Yes.
making a film business plan unless you have a real budget. It doesn't even
Yes.
matter again if it's a $500,000 film. This is what I always say: the moment you're going to ask somebody for their money, then you one legal, and some, if you're asking for investors, then you kind of, you on the legal side, you really need a real
Oh,
you need a
absolutely.
real
There's an
budget and all those
obligation.
things. But even if it's just, I'm going to ask, friends and family and this and that for money to make my film, I mean, why I say, like, you owe them the respect and courtesy of making a real budget. So that money they give you is going into a real budget that you have spent time on, or someone who has that experience has spent time on. So you're making a real product that just won't watch, even just $50,000 just, you know, go away. So you need a real budget. That's
Yeah.
number one. And then, and then you need a business. Okay. So if we're talking about a film business plan, it's going to have a lot of materials. It's going to have, you have your budget, how much money you need to raise it, who are your principal, who's attached to it, like your director and producer, do you have a sales agent, all those things. Of course, you have some cast attached, you need to list that as well. What is your marketing strategy? What do the comps look like? And a comp is not like, oh, I have a horror movie, and Blair Witch was a horror movie, or paranormal.
Yeah.
Like, a comp is the same budget level, the same genre, the same distribution plan, the same level of cast. So it needs to, like, so whatever film you're using as a comp, it needs to really, really align with your film. A lot of times people are like, I have an action film, like they're going to make an action film and they'll use John Wick as a comp. It's like, but do you have $100 million budget?
Right.
So so you need to have comps that align with your film. You need to, I mean, if you expect, depending on the type of investor you're going to, if you're going to like an institutional investor, they want to see sales estimates that have been put together. If you're going to like high net worth investors, they won't. I mean, you should have that information anyway because it helps them understand how they'll make their money back. But so you need to show like how you plan on making the money back and making a profit. So those are the core elements. Just, you know, what's your budget, who's attached, how are you going to make the movie, where, and how are you going to release it, and how much money is it going to make, and why. I mean, and how did you come up with that number?
Yeah.
So you need to have the materials to say this is how much it's going to make.
Yeah.
So they're usually anywhere between like 7 to 11 pages long, like a real business plan.
Yeah.
So they could be longer, could be shorter. It depends on how much detail you're putting in there. If you have a lot of different things attached, you want to lay all those things out. So if you have fewer things attached, then you may have to lay out less stuff. But it's not just a one-page document. I mean, you're talking about I would say on average, I would say 10 pages. You're in the normal average place for an investor document.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I get a lot of people again that kind of reach out, and one of the things that they say is, "Hey, my budget's 500,000, let's say." And so they're kind of predicting before we haven't even done a schedule. And that's what most people don't understand too, is if you got a budget, you got a schedule, because how are you going
Yeah.
to be able to budget without the schedule? And I know what they're saying though. What they're trying to say is that, hey, I'm an independent filmmaker. This is what I think I can raise, or this is what I have raised. This is what the capital and now I can get my hands on. Well, then that's a little different animal. Like there are ways to back into stuff, but that should not be the normative. And I'm finding that that is the normative way. And we need to move away from that because, as Tyler, as you mentioned, I mean, there is a fiduciary responsibility and even a legal obligation when you are taking and exchanging monies for shares within that. You're responsible to that. The moment you take someone's money with a promise to do something with it, you better make sure that you're very clear on that. Now, I'm no attorney, and this isn't advice, this is entertainment and educational, but you should take that to heart and definitely get an attorney to review your stuff.
Yeah, always. Especially if
So
you're going to have someone sign a contract that says, "Hey, I'm giving you money and I'm hoping to get money back." I
that's
mean, for
right.
your own sake, you want a contract that keeps you protected.
That's right. Contracts only come into play when there's challenges, and nobody expects when it goes into things with, "Hey, let me have a challenge at the end of this." So you're better
Yeah.
off on the front end. What's been some of the biggest challenges you faced in kind of balancing the creativity with the business side of filmmaking, and maybe even what advice might you give filmmakers for kind of navigating the challenges that we're seeing today? I mean, we're seeing a lot of runaway production. We're seeing a lot of smaller budgets, just different landscapes, and even like you said, like verticals are starting to become a thing. Like I'm even seeing like these shorts. They're the romantic genre, and they
Mhm.
are these 5 minute little sequences where it has a beginning, middle, and an end. It ends on a cliffhanger. Then they go right into the other one, and it's about a
Mhm.
total 90-minute run. But I was just reading about a month ago that a company just raised $30 million to do this. So this isn't like a like, I wonder if that's going to stick. No, they're putting money into this, thinking that they must have the data there to prove that there's something there. But I'm just wondering about some of the challenges that filmmakers are having to face in 2025 that is kind of new and fresh that they might not have had to have faced before in history.
Um, well, you know, that's a tough question. I think every year, I mean, I would say every handful of years, you will hear that, it's a really challenging time for indie filmmakers. I mean, it has never not been a challenging time for indie filmmakers, You know,
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, the 90s were great for indie filmmakers." Yeah, if you had access, yeah, but did you have access to a 35 millimeter camera and all that's like, I mean, now you have an iPhone and
Yeah.
editing, you can do everything on your phone. You can act in it and direct it and edit everything yourself. So, you know, it, it's like, maybe, at that time there was a lot more audience appetite and distributors and studios were doing, interesting mid-level indie films. but at the same time, you had to have, I mean, it was hard. People, it was very hard to make that happen unless you really had the tenacity to just get the camera and get the, it's like to rent cameras and to shoot on 16 millimeter film and all those things. So, and now you have better technology, but then you maybe distribution is a little bit is much different than it used to be. So there's different kinds of challenges. But I think that the thing is, it's so easy to look at what's difficult and what's challenging, and then and that's what you're focusing on. And instead, it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. So how am I going to make this work? And and because if you're just focusing, there's so much focuses on challenges, and you need to be figuring out, okay, solutions. What are the solutions to these challenges? Not solutions for the whole industry, but for me. Because we see articles like, oh, the industry is doing this and the industry is this, and it's so hard to get raise money for indie films. And I've got 4 films out right now that we're about to raise financing on in the $2 to $5 million range, and we're having great conversations now. I mean, there's no guarantees, but it's probably going to happen. And this is all within the last 3 months. So from my point of view, I'm like, things look great. And from someone else's point of view, they look bad. So don't look at the whole picture of, oh, the industry is struggling. Like, just look at you and what you're able to do and accomplish. Because I think it's so easy to get disheartened, and then you don't put forth the effort. So the biggest thing is just, you got to connect with the right people, and it's taken me a heck of a long time. I mean, I've had all kinds of partners, and I've worked with all kinds of other producers, and you go up and down, and some things work, and some things fall apart, and I've been on the verge of you know being a co-producer in big movies that are about to have huge financing, and then fall apart. So find the just but you got to keep going through it. So find the right people to work with is really the biggest thing. Collaborate who is and who you work with, and not like who like I know A-list people, just who and who your connections are is really how you get things made and get things through. So I wouldn't worry, so because so to the it's hard to answer that question because everyone has different challenges. And no, if someone who's raising, $50,000, $500,000 is a different challenge than I may have, and a different challenge than somebody else may have. And maybe somebody has access to a big actor, but they don't know anybody else. Or maybe somebody has, you know, they're like, I have a there's a I know I've seen this before. Like, it's like I have someone who's interested in investing in a movie, but I don't have any movie. And then it's like, and they put that out on like LinkedIn. I'm like, I'm looking for this kind of movie, and 150 people submit something, but none of that is good. And they're like, I don't know how to even turn this into actually a movie. I thought I could
Yeah.
just do this easily. So everyone has different challenges. The industry is challenging. It's always hard. You
Yeah.
know, it's never not easy.
Yep.
It's just, you got to constantly navigate it, and you need people to do it with. I mean, no one makes movies alone.
Amen to that.
So you
Yep.
have to have people you have to be working with people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you got to have a collaboration. Filmmaking is just like life. It's not a solo sport. It was never intended to be. It's all about collaboration. You'll get a better product. Who do you think is making the best films or some really good films right now, and why? So who are
Oh,
you a fan of?
that's a hard question. I mean, I watch so much stuff. Usually laying in bed on my iPad before going to sleep. But because I have 3 kids and a busy life. And so it's like I watch 30 minutes at a time every single day to an hour. I mean, I don't know if I don't, you know, 2 reasons I don't like this question. I usually don't usually when people ask like what's your favorite movie, I never answer that question because I don't have a favorite movie. I have favorite movies at any given
Right,
time.
right.
So it's
Give me
hard
the
to say. I
genre.
mean, I like all kinds of, I like all kinds of content. I mean, I'll watch anything. I'll watch documentary, I'll watch rom-com, I'll watch action, I'll watch horror, I'll watch everything. It just if it's good, I'll watch it. So I don't know if there's any particular director or filmmaker. I'm like, yeah, this is the one I'm digging right now. I just consume anything
Yeah,
as long as the story's good and it's interesting.
yeah, exactly. Does it hold you?
So yeah, and and actually this is I will never say which movies to do, but I'll start movies and then I'll get like 20, 30 minutes in and like, no, I'm not going to waste another hour. I'd rather just, if I only have 30 minutes or to 45 minutes a day to watch something, it's like I want to get the best out of it. So I'll start lots of things and then just be like, nah, and then
Yeah.
stop them and then watch something else. Now, that doesn't mean that movie is bad. It
Right.
just means I'm not into it. I'm not into that story, or I'm not into the pacing even, or I'm not
Yeah.
into whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have an answer for like who any director or filmmaker that I'm like, yeah, this is the one I'm so into right now. I'm just there's so many incredible filmmakers. So I just like to consume, and I don't even have a genre that I could say like this is the one I always go to, because it all
Yeah.
depends on my mood. Like
Yeah.
I could maybe watch two actions in a row. Like, okay, I need something a little lighter. I'm gonna watch, a drama or a comedy or whatever else, and then maybe I'll watch a couple of horrors. I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for something different than that. And
Yeah.
okay, I've watched a bunch of live action. I'm gonna now watch some unscripted. I'm gonna watch some documentaries, and then just kind of flow through that.
Yeah. No, I have an eclectic taste as well that's broad, and I like to push myself because particularly the older movies, I've watched a lot of them just because I was like, all right, I guess I'll have to kind of watch this because I'm saying I'm a filmmaker, and I'll watch it from like the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever.
Yeah.
Freaking love it, just love it. So, and I never would have naturally watched them on my own. So I'm glad I kind of pushed myself into that perspective to get a broader palette and exposure to different things during different times, even.
No,
Um,
that's a good point. I try to do that too. I would say like at least once a month. Like, okay, I'm gonna pull. Like, I just watched Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid a
yeah,
couple of days ago. What is it, 1972? And
yeah,
then actually, I mean, I had never seen Casablanca from beginning to end in one go. And it was
yeah,
always with pieces of it. And over Christmas, it's like, okay, I'm gonna watch Casablanca. So yeah, it's always good to go back and dip your toes in into what's been made before.
yeah, yeah. Casablanca was actually one of the ones that again, always intended to watch, but just hadn't. And then one day I was like, today's the day. And it was
Yeah.
fantastic, and ends up being like in my top 10 for sure. So I have two right now that are on my radar, Rear Window and Vertigo. I need to, those are two I'm trying to watch as well. If you're curious, for the listeners, go to the American Film Institute, AFI. They have a top 100 list every year. Those are the films you should take a gander at if you haven't seen them. So for the gearheads among us, what's the single most important thing or piece of gear that you couldn't live without? And it doesn't even have to be like on set gear. It could be anything from producer gear to whatever it might be.
Well, I mean, as a producer, my laptop, I couldn't do anything without that. I
That's
mean,
true.
I haven't. I mean, the last time I've actually used gear has probably been 10 years at least. I mean, uh I haven't used gear in a long time. I mean, I've only been on the producing side now for such a long time that I don't even touch gear. Actually, that is a lie. Because for a little, for I was working with a virtual production company called VP Nordic, which is a virtual production company in Scandinavia. And so for the first time, I mean, I was helping because they wanted some help as on the producing side with there's some projects that haven't come through because they were the tech and creatives, but they wanted some help on the producing side. So
Yeah.
I had been working with them. So to be able to play with these incredible and be around this incredible, LED panels and walls, and to
Oh
see
yeah.
this technology and how it works, and was just incredible. So that's some technology that I have played with recently that is so fun and so cool. It's incredible
Yeah.
what can be accomplished even on just a very small, like 6 foot by even 6 foot wall of
Yeah.
panels. Like instead of, you don't need this big giant curve thing. You can have just a very simple wall, and they are the clarity is incredible. And even when you're standing there and looking at it, it just feels so real. But it's
Yeah.
obviously through the camera, it's quite
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, even better. No, I fell in love with that the first time I saw it. I just, I think we all knew, like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. What is this? Can I do this? And then funny enough, it's kind of it's new tech, but from an old method.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
very, very interesting. What's some good advice that you've received and that you held on to and that has maybe even shaped your career? So something you were given or picked up on. What was some advice?
You know what? Well, sometimes I think advice can come from two ways. One, there can be just it's actually spoken to learn and other thing is I feel like it's unintentional advice, which is more of just like maybe the way someone is acting and doing, and you pick up on that and think like, I want to mirror and mimic that, and that's what I want. So I'll do two here. I mean, more than anything else, is that think of film as a business. Number one, I had when I was in grad school, I was lucky that my producing professor was the producer of like The Breakfast Club and Sweet
Oh, cool.
16 and all those things. So he
Yeah.
had a great prolific career, and it's just, and then before that he came from the music industry. So it's like, it's a business, and you got to think in those terms. You can make great art and you can have great films and great art, but it's a business.
Yeah.
So, I'll think and operate on that way. But then, more than and then the other thing is I when I was working, I worked as an A2, like an audio assistant on this reality TV show. It was like one of those 24-hour things where it's like, I
Oh,
think like Jersey Shore, but it was in the South, in Savannah, Georgia. And so I had this supervisor. His name was Doc Justice, and he was so cool and kind. And I had no experience at all in audio. Actually, I just was like dropped in this department because there's like 24 PAs, and he just needed help that day. And and I'm running cables and doing this stuff all day long, and I'm making mistakes because because I'm doing things wrong sometimes because I've never done it. And he's just like, hey, you're doing that wrong. This is how you got to do it. And then and then he'd walk away, and I would do it. It wouldn't be like, whoa, what's going on here? What's
yeah.
happening? And this and that. And he was just so cool. But I kept thinking like, you would just because you'd be like, oh, that's wrong. It's like you got to fix that, man. It's like and you got to do it quickly because that took you an hour, and now you got to fix that. And it's gonna be another hour. But it wasn't like it wasn't bad. I felt like disappointed. I was like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he talked to the producers. He's like, I want to hire Tyler to be under me like an A2. and
Wow.
and I and I was like, hell yeah, because I got to be in this instead of being a PA all around. I got to be in this department, and I got double the salary. And it was such a cool experience, and I learned so much. And he was so nice, and that was the only show I did. But then he like gave my name out to other supervisors, and I mean that was right before I moved to India, so I never worked after that in audio. But like I got calls from other supervisors like, hey, Doc talked about you. Do you need to work on
Wow.
this show? And then literally it's like I have no experience, and it just what showed me was like kindness. And he was
Yeah.
such a nice person. He was so kind, so cool, so helpful and teaching. And I thought, man, that is what I want to always do. So especially when I became a production manager, like I would pick out one PA that was like really working hard because the ones that are usually working the hardest are the ones that like want to learn the most.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd be like, would you like to work under me in this department? And in essence, be my assistant.
Yeah.
And because I want to teach you how it's all, happening. And they were always happy. And I mean, I took great pride in like making sure even all the crew was so happy and high morale. And I remember like one film I left, and even the gaffer was like, and I had never worked with him before, but it was like, Tyler, whatever film you're working on next, let me know because I want to be on it. So kindness is, I would say, is the unintentional advice that I learned. Just be good to people because they'll be good back. But it's just good anyway.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just good to be kind.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and it is such a simple thing, but does go a very long way, particularly when we're diving more into technology and there's more separation from people. The kindness really does go a long way when we come together. Are there any life-changing books, podcasts, or I even threw in like behind the scenes stuff that you would recommend for filmmakers? Any books or podcasts?
Um, I I don't listen to podcasts as much as I used to. I listened for a while. Listened to like I would listen to different movie making podcasts. I wish I would remember the names of them all, but one of them is playing Check, which is really cool, just to understand. I think they talk about a director's films before they got in essence a studio film, and they were sort of written a blank check and like to make your film. Which is a really cool because they're like 3 4 hours long, I think, each episode. So it's really
Wow.
cool they dive into a director and sort of their their filmography, and then how that film maybe helped or hurt them. So that's really interesting because it gives you really good insight into, especially on the creative side, into directors and and also just the industry in general.
Yeah.
Uh, Books, I don't know, man. I read a lot of books. I mean, it depends on what kind. I mean, let's see. Do you have anything sitting right there? No, but I like to read books about the film industry in general. Actually, I like to read books about like specific stories. Like actually, I do have one sitting here that's this is called like the Devil's Candy, and it's about the bonfires of the vanities. How that with Bruce Willis and Tom Hanks and the whole. It's really like this journalist was there doing from like development, pre-production, post-production, and it was like crazy. Shoot, and
Awesome.
it's interesting to hear and see to read about like the day to day of a production. That was a Brian De Palma film, and
Yeah.
then I have,
Of
and then like, I read the book Save the Cat, which is a great
course.
screenwriting book. And I really love that book. And, it's funny because you'll see a lot of hate on the internet about this. Like, this is why movies suck now because
Yeah.
everyone's writing like this. But that to me is like saying, that's like going to a restaurant and be like, this is what this food sucks because of recipe books.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you're
Yeah.
not supposed to, the idea, like, to me, like, Save the Cat is like, is a recipe. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is how you make the dish. Now that's going to be plain if you just copy this word for word. But you know, but it's great for recipe, for
Yeah.
that basic understanding. And then you go in and you add your own flavors, your own
Absolutely.
tastes, your own personality. So, but
Yeah.
I think it's an important book. And I think for even if you're not a screenwriter, I think it's a great book to read because it helps you sort of understand story and understand how story works.
Yeah. Complete.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely
yeah.
love that one.
On producing, I don't really remember it. I'd have to look back at. Uh, but there's a lot of great producing books. I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, there's some really good ones out there. Some more that are like, collegiate level where they're like college.
Yeah.
And then there's others that are, more quick to read. Those are the ones that I love too. I ask this of a lot of people, maybe, well, there's no maybe, because I'm in pursuit of it myself. I want to make sure that I always find myself kind of in the pursuit of the thing. And I want to make sure, because I have 5 kids, that I'm finding contentment along the way. So, how does one create longevity and find contentment in this industry? Any thoughts or words of wisdom?
Yeah, definitely. I would think that this focus on the one thing in front of you. Like everyone has the dream. Of course, they want to have they maybe that not like the big giant Hollywood dream, but everyone wants to make a good film. They want a film that gets talked about, that gets eyeballs, that makes money. That's like okay, they get that so they can make another great film.
Right.
And you want those things, of course, but you really just got to focus on that one thing in front of you. Don't worry about the 10 years from now and the 15 years from now because that's not going to help you. And the thing is, you never know what film you're working on. Everyone believes it, and there's nothing wrong with this, but everyone believes the film they're working on is going to be an amazing film, that is going to be a great film. And so many things that can go wrong that are out of a lot of control, and some things are in people's control, but the film just did not turn out that great. And it
Yeah.
did not connect that well. And no one sets out to make a bad film,
No one.
you know.
Yep.
But those things happen. So that's why you just got to focus the thing in front of you because it's especially young people who are younger, like in their 20s. They're like, oh, by the time I'm 30, I want to be this kind of director and this and this. And like, man, most directors don't even hit their stride until they're 50. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like most of the time it's a long, long slog. And really
Yep.
because you also need to live life. You've got to learn a
You
lot
do.
and
Yep.
experience a lot.
Yep.
And that's the whole thing. So much is about experience. So just don't be in any rush. Just
That's great.
because we're so like you're in such a rush to get way up here, way ahead that you're not focusing on what you're doing now. That's actually what's going to slow you down from getting there.
Yeah.
Put that energy and thought into what you're creating now because you'll learn so much from it. You'll gain a lot of experience. You'll be able to take that stuff inward and then you use it for the next thing, as opposed to like, I just got to get this done. I just need to make this $50,000 film so I can make the $500,000 film. Then I just got
Yeah.
to do that one so I can make the $2 million film. It's like, whoa,
Right.
whoa, whoa! Just worry about that $50,000 film,
Right.
and it's
Exactly.
only 50,000, and make it great, and make it as great as you can with the budget you have.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and don't worry about 10 years from now, and just be in
Yep.
that moment.
Yep. Stay in the moment. I definitely like that. So as we kind of wind down, what is next for you? I know you kind of mentioned trying to get some capital for some films that you have. And also what's next, but where can listeners connect with you and maybe support your work? How can they find, kind of what you're working on?
Next is I sort of do that content creator thing. So I'm on LinkedIn daily. Um, so you can just find me on Tyler M. Reid, which is also my website, Tyler M. Reid, M as in Marshall. So I do that, but on the other side, I'm just at least for the time being, just going to focus on being a development producer, which is on the financing side. So if anyone's interested, so what I do and my business partner do is that we are looking for films that already have a director attached, obviously have a screenplay. They maybe have some actors attached. Maybe there's even they've already had their sales estimates together, things like that. So they have a kind of what's called quite a well packaged film, and then we can help finish packaging. And then our goal is to go out and raise money for them. And we come in and one film, it's like we are just coming in as EPs, like we're just helping them find money.
Right.
That's all they need.
Right.
And then other ones where we can be much more hands on because of both of our experiences, in actual filmmaking. So it comes down to the needs of the films and the filmmakers. But we're not like creative producers. We're not like just getting a script
Yeah.
and then saying, okay, now we're going to help put everything together. Like it has to already have things in place, so we can focus on the financing more than anything else first. And then, of course, if they want us to be attached in some more ways, as producers, that's something we do too. So that's our goal this year,
That's
is just
awesome.
to keep focusing on that. My partner Thomas, he comes from he comes from a streamer buyer background, so he worked for a streamer. He was the one who bought shows and things like that. So we also package shows and series, and we're taking them out to pitch also. So which is a kind of a different beast than raising
Yeah.
capital.
Yeah. Yeah. Different path, but necessary. Well, awesome, brother. Look, man, I'm a fan for sure. I love what you're doing with your newsletter. It's like-minded people. It definitely has helped me, and just appreciate your willingness to kind of come on. Hopefully, you, the listener, if you're new, you like, subscribe, and share, of course, just to get the word out. But hopefully, you could take away some great pointers from Tyler. Remember that nothing is wasted. That we're all here for one another. It's not a solo sport, and get out there and make your project happen. Until then, I will see you on the next one.